is called all menus, right?
This is all menus, correct? Yep.
All right. Okay. Cool.
So for this InDesign project, we're doing the menu design. And instead of doing it 8.5 by 11 tall, like a portrait, we're actually going to be using it as a landscape format. So the long way is across the top so that we can do a trifold brochure. And you guys have
11 by 8.5.
say that again?
So 11 by 8.5.
Yeah, it's a standard letter size, correct. But the 11 is across rather than up the sides. So you're designing it in InDesign using landscape format rather than portrait, which is something we typically, we just changing the orientation. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop into InDesign and pull that up. You guys can still see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And I've given you in your project sheet a really, really specific directions on what we're doing with this, even though I'm going to go through those steps with you today. But I just wanted to make sure that you guys were comfortable. If you do this today and then you lose it, that you can still come in and recreate it if you need to. All right. And the reason why some of these pieces are really specific is because I'm teaching you how to use master pages for the first time. I know we've talked about master pages, but now we're going to be using them. And we're also going to be setting this up so that you guys can do your sketching work for the cover of the menu right in the document you'll also be creating. And then that way we can work with having to save around those other pages that we're not going to be using. So I'm going to teach you a couple different techniques with that too. All right, so that's part of this process. I just want to make sure you guys know how to do all of these things, and then when we get to the back end, the production side of it, knowing how to set up that final PDF and then create everything with crop marks. So there's some production to this as well.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just opened InDesign.
Yeah.
And it says create new or open. But like at first it says iPad Pro with 1920 letter or custom size. I go to custom size.
No, you'll be able to use letter for this. We're just going to change the orientation of it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I go letter, but it doesn't give me the other option. It just says tabloid USB. Oh, okay. I pick on letter. Okay.
Yep, you're going to choose letter. And mine's coming up. It's just taking a minute because I'm recording this, so it just takes a little bit out of my system.
Okay, all right. Because I clicked on letter, but it didn't give me the option of like landscape.
It does. You have to do it in the next screen.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. I see. All right.
Right. So if you're coming in and you're choosing letter, right? So we're going to go in and create new. My plugins don't want to go away here. Come on, you got this. Sorry, it's running a little slow. Sorry, mine is just having a rough morning. I think we're getting there.
No rush.
All right. I clicked too many times. I've got two of these. All right, let's try this again. All right. Woo! Okay. When you come into create new, right, and we go into a new document, these were some of the things we looked at when we first started with our last project, right? So I'm just going to pull this down so I can see everything. But the idea is that, one, we always have to change the measurement format, right? Our units to inches. That's just a standard. And because we chose our letter format, we're seeing our 8.5 by 11 here. I'm going to go ahead and name this document right now. And I'm going to use my last name, Sush _ and I'm going to call this menu. Okay, that way when I turn this project in, I'll know that it's mine. All right, so the format, typically the standard is our portrait, right? And you're seeing that here where the person is standing up and it's in the taller format. We're going to switch that orientation to landscape. So Christian, this is where we typically do that. So it just rotates the width and the height, because our width needs to be 11 and our height needs to be 8.5, and that's how we get the landscape format. So we're using a standard size. We just need to change the default orientation. Now the other side of this too.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. I didn't see where you did that because like I am on Skype on the tablet. And
Okay.
I don't know why I don't see your screen.
You can't.
Maybe I clicked on something because when you were showing the trailer, I could see your screen, but not anymore.
Huh. Maybe try turning it off and turning it back on.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
Yeah. Sometimes that helps. I don't know why.
How
But
many pages for this one?
we're going to do 3 pages for this, Brandon. The first page we're going to be using to do our cover sketches. And then the second and the third page will be our menu pages. So we'll do 3. And we want to turn facing pages off. We're going to deselect that box because we don't want them to, they're backing up to each other, but in a different way. So is that working now, Christian?
It totally is.
Okay.
It's working. Okay. So, what did you say? Where did you get that page we're looking right now?
Okay, so you have your width and your height, right? And your inches are units. And then right next to that it says orientation, and there's 2 pictures of a person in a box. Do you see your 2 little icons there?
Okay, so I have to close it now. And so from the first screen where it says try something new,
Yep.
I'm going to click on create new, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And it should bring you up into new document.
I got it, except unlike yours that you have like 4x4, you have 12 options. I only have 4.
That's okay. You went into the print window.
I see it. The orientation. I see it. Okay.
Yep.
So I click on orientation.
Landscape.
Yeah. And I click on default. Default is good.
Default is 8.5 by 11. Yep. So you'll get that to come up, or you can always come up to your print option and then choose, right? Because you said you had 4. This is probably where you are, right? And it says letter. So either way, we just have to make sure we change our units to inches and that we set it up for landscape. And then Brandon just asked this question. You were gone. So 3 pages. And then we're going to deselect the checkbox that says facing pages. We don't want that on.
Okay. We don't want that on. Okay, I deselected it. So it's gonna be 11 inches by 8.5.
Correct.
Okay.
That's your standard letter size. Now we do want to have columns in here because we are breaking this page into 3 separate parts. Even though we're going to fold it, this is a great way to put a grid in and not have to worry about where that information is going to fall. So we're going to do 3 columns. That'll be 1 for each of the folds. And then within that, we want to make sure that we're set up so that the gutter will actually be where the text is going to start from the edge of the fold. So 0.25, sometimes that's a little tight because we want to make sure we have enough of that gutter spacing there. And we're going to be adding in separate guides to show where the actual fold is. So we want to bump this up You can choose a little bit more or a little bit less, but we have to be at least 1/4 of an inch from the fold. And the reason why I've set it up for 1/2 an inch is because we only get half of that per folded side, right? So half of that would be 1/4 of an inch. So
How many columns?
3 columns.
And the column gutter?
That's what I'm talking about right now, Brandon. So right now, if I choose 1/2 an inch, I only get 1/4 of an inch from the edge of that fold. So I'm going to bump it in just a little bit more, just to get a little bit more off that fold. I just don't want any of my text to get lost in that. Now on the inside where it opens up, you're fine. But on the outside where we have the cover and we have the back panel and our reveal panel, that could be a little bit of a problem. So we just want to make sure we've got everything where it needs to be and far enough away from that fold so we don't lose text or lose issues if the fold gets misfolded just a little bit, right? So this gives us that space. So 0.625 works out really nice. And then these are your margins on the outside. So if we do 625 divided by 2, hold on, I gotta get my math here. 0.625 divided by 2, that's 0.3125. So we're going to set that outside margin to 0.3125. Oh. Okay, that way it will equal the distance that we're also choosing in the gutter for each panel. And I know this seems like there's a lot in your brain, like I don't know what she's really talking about. 0.31. What's that?
How much better did you say?
0.3125.
0.3125.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. So this is gonna. It's half of our gutter spacing. So you'll see why in a minute. So it will show you how that happens. In fact, if you guys, if you can, hit the preview button at the bottom, and it should come up and show you. Here's your outside margin. And then here's your gutter, and half of this spacing should match this. And that way we've got the same distance on both sides of this single panel, which is going to be our individual panel when we fold this up. Does it make sense?
Okay.
All right. I will show it to you here in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and add my bleed in. 0.125 is our standard. That's 1/8 of an inch, so we can add that in. And that's that red line. So if you decide to do a bleed, you have something to go to, right? And that's it. I don't need to do anything with slug. And I've actually changed my mind about the facing pages. We're going to turn that back on because I want to show you on master pages how this works. So we're going to turn that back on. So please check box the facing pages back on. All right. If you have all that settings done, let's hit create.
Oh. I was just missing the bleed areas. What?
0.125.
0.125 on top and bottom, inside and outside.
All the above.
0.125. Okay.
You got it. All right, so this is what you should have. It should look just like this. And when you come over to your window area, you should have your master page, or you should have your pages set up, and they're going to look like this. So page 1 is always single. Whoop.
I think I messed up.
And then page 2 and 3 are going to be next to each other, so we can do our master page guides. What's wrong, Brandon? What do you got?
Good. The columns you have are a lot bigger than what I have.
The columns are 3, and then your gutter spacing is 0.6125.
0.6125.
And if you guys ever get into a situation where you have a problem with what you've created, on every individual page, you can't do it overall, but you can come into your layout area up top here, margins and columns, and this will tell you what settings that you've already got. I actually take that back. Your gutter was 0.625, not 6125. Sorry about that, Brandon.
Wait, what is it?
0.625.
.625.
Yeah. But you can always check up here if you need to. All right, so does that look better?
I'm gonna have to talk to you afterwards. Probably Friday.
Okay, what's going on? Is it not looking great?
It's not the same as your screen.
What about it is different? Just the gutter? The spacing here?
Right. Yeah, the columns, your columns are much taller than the columns I have.
Taller?
The columns.
What about the columns? They're taller or they're not as wide?
They're taller than what I have.
Okay, so that would be the outside spacing. So when you went in and created the gutter, right, you did it 625, but your margins should be 0.3125.
For which one? The top?
The margins, all of them, will be 0.3125. I know it's hard for you to see my screen because you're on your phone, but I'm trying my best to help you with those numbers.
All right.
So what does that look like now? Does it look closer?
Yeah, it looks a little bit better.
Okay. So one of the things that we do when we set up, we make a lot of decisions about the layout before we even get into it. And I think the last two projects have proven that for you guys, is that you do have to have a plan before you get in here. If you don't have a plan, you just start designing and you don't have the format that you want to use, it can cause a lot of problems. So always put together just a few quick sketches of the idea that you want to do. And in our case, I'm going to need you guys to, at some point here this week, because you have to show this to me, you have to send me a photograph of your dummy. We call it a dummy, and I was reading through my project sheet this morning, and I just laughed because I was like, this is pretty funny. I wrote this a long time ago, but one of the things that I asked you guys to do was to create a dummy for the menu. That's step 6. And I said in here, a dummy is the student sitting next to you, and that was just to see that if you were actually reading the instructions. So maybe my sense of humor isn't funny this morning, but I thought that was kind of cute. But it's actually a mock-up of exactly what we'll be working on. And so it's really important that you do one of these for this project, just because we are doing some folding. And I want you guys to have this on your desk while you're working so that you make sure that you understand what it is that you need to accomplish. Because it can get confusing when you start to fold this and then you start to figure out how you're going to lay it out on your actual electronic board. So I just have a sheet of 8.5 by 11 lined paper that I have, and I'm going to show this to you. I'm going to turn my video on here in a minute, so you guys might have to turn your video on. I don't know if that makes sense or not. Can I start this, please? Start video. Here I am today. All right, can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay. So this is going to be my final brochure, okay? And it has a introduction panel. So this is my cover. This is going to be my reveal panel. We call this the reveal panel because ta-da, it's like magic. And then we have the interior of the actual menu. On the back side, this is our back panel, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just write on here what each of these are. So here's my cover, here's my back, because I want to show you what happens when we open this up flat, just so that you guys can be able to see what layout you need to do. So this is going to be page 1, page 2, page 3. Now the dummy doesn't have to be a perfect fold. It can be smaller if you don't have the right size piece of paper, but it's just to help you, right? So here's your cover. Can you guys see that? Here's your back,
Yeah.
right? Here's your back side. And then here's your reveal panel, which opens up with page 1. and then here's your page 2 and page 3. So when I lay this flat, page 1, 2, and 3 makes sense, right? Because they go together. But when I lay this flat, you can see the cover is actually on the far right-hand side. Your reveal panel is on the left, and your back is in the middle. And so it's not your typical layout. And so this is why I want you guys to do one of these and just have it on your desk so that way you can make sure that you're actually putting your layout together in the correct order as you start to do this. So the dummy is really important. The step 6 part of this, you actually get a separate grade for in the project overall. So it's really important that you have this available for you so you can ask yourself questions.
Do is after making it, we just have to take a picture of it and send it to you, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
You can hold it up and, smile. So yeah, I want to make sure you guys are making this and having this available for you on your desk so you can just revisit and make sure that you're putting the pages in the correct order that you need to have them for the final piece. This side more so than the interior, but because this has your cover and your back and your reveal in an unusual order, right? But this is the way it has to be, but it's an unusual order because of the nature of how it folds. All right, so I'm going to just tuck that up there in front of my desk, and that way you've got that available.
Can you take a picture of yours and send it to Kazala?
I sure can. I will absolutely do that for you. And obviously, like I said, you can make a little one. It doesn't even have to be the full size if you don't want to, just so that you know where these folds happen, right? And how they organize and then what we do to put them in. So we want to make sure that we have sections within the menu. The reveal panel, sometimes we have salads, or sometimes we have just drinks, or maybe it's just a dessert section. I wouldn't put main entrees here because this panel disappears when you open up the rest of the menu. So that's why salads work great, because that might be a choice for someone who's looking for just a salad menu. They're probably not also looking for an alternative. Drinks works out good, or desserts, because it's a separate topic area. You can visually treat this a little bit different as well, because it allows for you to kind of highlight maybe some things. And then, of course, when we get to the interior spread where you have page 1, 2, and 3, these are going to give you a nice place to start organizing all of those menu items that you guys found online, and you can start to put them in. This is where you get to make decisions about what content that you want to put where. A lot of times we start with appetizers, and then we move on to main entrees. Maybe there's salads. Maybe there's sandwiches, then we get into desserts over here, depending on how you organized it. If you put desserts on your reveal panel, then obviously you'd have room for more stuff over here because you had different entrees. So if we came back to the Sinbad's menu, they start with soups, right? So we could start with soups, and then we go into appetizers. And they have a pretty long list of appetizers, so maybe you cut that section a little short. Then they move into salads, right? So we could start up here with salads. And then they go to pasta. So pasta could be down here. And then they do pitas, which is probably a big part of their menu, right? So we do pitas. And then pizzas. What is that? I've never had a pizza. And maybe that's all we can fit. So there's specialties we can't fit, but maybe we can use the reveal panel then we have juice and beverages, right? They have a really long list of different juices and beverages, and they have beers and stuff in there too. And then they also do desserts. So this could be a section where you see desserts. So you could pick one or the other, right? You don't have to have it all. Drinks are a good idea, though, because people do like to buy them when they're eating. But you guys can decide which is going to be the right sections to put where. Just really think about your reveal panel in the fact that this information...
I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Do
Dawn.
we have like the hours, and we we also provide and stuff like that? If we want to get more items in, can we leave that stuff out?
So we're gonna talk about that in 1 second.
Okay,
So
sorry.
hold that thought. Nope, it's a good thought. We're gonna lead into that right next here. But I just want you to think about the sections, how people will visually see them, and Christian, you had mentioned before how we can manipulate people into buying certain things, right? So that's what we're trying to do.
But,
Is
what I imagine is that, like, if you put like information that you imagine that the people want right away, they probably want to explore the rest of the thing.
yeah,
So maybe if you put like first on the reveal like the salads or things that you don't think that people will look at, and then you put at the end the things that that you imagine that they will really want, then maybe you're making them work through all of the menu to find that.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's why they put appetizers first. It's not because they come first. It's because most of the time you wouldn't buy them probably if you didn't see them first, right? It's kind of like the stuff at the register when you check out. You don't need anything that's there, but you always buy something because, I'll just get some gum or I'll get some candy, right? You know how that works. It's all psychology. All right. I will take a picture of this and send this over in Kazala, Robert. So bear with me for a minute. So the next piece that we need to look at for this menu, now that we have all 3 pages set up, is we're going to come in and we're going to create that line that's going to happen through the middle, and that's going to be our fold line. And that's why I had you turn facing pages back on, because we're going to go ahead and we're going to create that using our master pages. And typically I turn it off, but I wanted to show you guys what happens. So in your page window that you have available over here on the right hand side, we show 3 different pages, right? But in our master page, you're going to have 2 separate pages that are going to show up now, because we are looking at these as complete and individual left and right hand pages. So I'm going to make you guys do a little bit more work with this so that you can see what happens. Now in our document, I have 2 right pages and 1 left. So if I come in and put things on my right page, they're not going to show up on my left page. And just keep this in mind, I'm in my master pages right now. I'm not in my main pages, okay? So I can only work with master pages information, and I'm going to show both of those pages so that way I can make sure that I've got those selected together. And we're going to go ahead and be working with a few guides. So we're going to be working with our rulers on the top and the side here, just so that you guys, so I'm just setting this up so I can see both pages at once. It doesn't really matter if you want to do 1 page and just see that, that's fine too. And basically what I've asked you guys to do, I'm just going to bring it up so that you guys can just read through this, right? So we're going to come into master pages. I double clicked on the page so I have it activated. These pages are master pages. That's what I'm seeing right now. I'm going to go ahead and draw a 1-point vertical dash, a dash that's going to come right down the middle of this guide. And I'm going to make it center it up in the gutter spacing here, because that's going to be my fold line. So this is going to be where we're going to show that on the menu. Normally we wouldn't put these here to print them. In the past, I've had my students, I've allowed them to print them just so that they could see what happens. But if you want to turn these off, we will put these on their own area, and we can turn them off after we're done for printing purposes. When we get back on campus someday, we'll want to print this out. Obviously the first dash, we want to have it right centered up here. So I've given you coordinates, but the reality is that we can probably visually center this just as well as we can position it in the control dock. But I'll show you either way. All right, so I'm going to pop over here now. I'm going to use my line tool because it only gives me straight lines, which is kind of what I want. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the bleed area. So I'm going to start with on the red line. And I'm going to use my shift key so that I keep a straight line, right? I'm going to just use that and bring that straight down. And if you guys saw, there was a little line that popped up as I was working, and that line is telling me I'm off just a tad here. Of course, I did it visually too. And now it's setting up to be centered on this gutter spacing. And if I move this around, it will probably snap pretty quick. right to that center point. I'm going to turn my Essentials Classic on because right now it defaulted to Essentials, and I want to get that top ruler in there, and this is where I can double check my position. It's in 3.675 in my x-axis point, and I think I told you guys we should be set at 3.625. So I'm off by literally just a slight hair, and I can change that setting right up top here. See, I actually...
How do you zoom out again? I've done...
There's a zoom tool right at the bottom of your toolbar.
Okay.
So when you click on that, you can hit your Option key, and that will give you a negative glass, and then you can zoom out. The other option, Christian, is down here at the bottom. Can you guys see this down here?
Uh-huh.
It says 100%. You can always come in here and you can choose another option, and that will give you different percentages. So,
cool.
so
Okay.
you can adjust it that way,
Yeah.
or
that
if you
works.
need to do it manually, go ahead and you can use the magnifying glass and zoom in and out with your Option key as your negative, and the normal is the plus. Make sense?
Yes.
There's always 10
So
different
the
ways to
line,
do it.
but it's not perfectly vertical.
If you hold your Shift key when you use the line tool, it has to be.
Okay.
So if I come back up and do another one here, so if I grab my line tool, I literally hold my Shift key and just click and drag. It has to be, it can't, like it can only do 90, 45s and 180s. Like it can't do anything else because the Shift key allows it to keep it proportionate. Right? So it keeps it, so it has to do what you're telling it to do.
Okay.
Make sense? Did that work for you?
Yeah. Yeah, but then I clicked elsewhere and it turned black instead of blue. Is that okay?
Your line is black? Is that what you're saying? Your line is black? Christian?
Yes, it shouldn't be.
No, I'm asking you a question. Is your line black? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. That just means that you have a stroke on it right now. I just don't have a stroke on mine, so my blue is showing me my icon. Right? So I'm going to go ahead up top here, and I'm going to go ahead and add that 1 point in there, right?
Oh.
Now mine will be black too. We're going to change that though, so... Okay, so if you've created one, you can go ahead and create another one using the same method, or you can grab one and you can go up to edit and you can copy it and paste it and then reposition it where you want it to be. You're going to need 2 per page. So once you get your left page done, you can copy these. You can use Command C for copy. And then you're going to come over to page 2, and you could try doing a paste in place. Sometimes it pastes it to the other page. It depends on how it works. Or you can do regular paste and then just realign. And again, most of the time it'll snap in, and you can check over here. I can check my x-axis and see where I'm at with it. Of course, it's reading it as a full spread, so my numbers are off a little bit, but you can check that back end. So right now, you've got 2 pages that have 2 lines, 1 point with a black 1 point rule for each of them. We're going to change that up here in a minute. All right, so what did I tell you for your next step? You're going to select your lines, and you're going to click on the line, holding down the Shift key, and we're going to go ahead and change the transparency of these lines to 25%. So we're not changing the color, we're actually changing the transparency. So I'm going to select all 4 of them at one time so I can do everything at once. Come up to Object, go into Effects, and go into Transparency. When I click on that, it's going to allow me to come and change the opacity. So we're going to change that to 25%.
So I added. Wait, look up. Wait, where is it?
It's right up under Object, and it's under
Okay.
Effects.
All right.
All right, so your opacity's at 25%. Robert, you still with me? Dawn, you good?
Yes.
Dawn? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to hit OK, and now these lines are only going to be slightly showing because we don't want them to be a focal point, right? So they're only 25% of the actual color,
Oh, yes.
right? We just want them to be like subtle in the background, and we want to know where our fold is going to be, but we don't need it to be a big part of the design, right? And that's partly why we're doing this in our master pages as well, because they'll lock right down. All right, now the last part of this is that we want to go in and we're just going to create a dash, right? So there's a feature right in here. I'm going to select all 4 of these lines again. So they've all been selected, and this is going to allow us to be able to come in and change this. So I'm going to come up to my window. If you don't have it available, I'm going to come down to my stroke. This is going to give me my line options, right? And under type, I can choose all kinds of different lines. I'm just going to come down to my dashed one though, just regular dashes. And that's going to allow me to make dashed lines. And they should look like this. And a really great way when you're doing fold marks on a page like this,
Wait, which one?
you're using dashed. So if you've got it selected, you're in your type, you're going to come right down to dashed.
All right.
All right, and there are other types of dashes in here too. What's that, Christian?
So I selected all of it again, and then I just got lost on where to find the those like lines. Where is that again? In the
So you're still in your master pages, right?
yeah
And you created your lines, right, using your line tool.
yeah.
And then you went in and you added your 1 point stroke, so you had black lines, right?
That I didn't do. 1 point stroke.
Yep. Which you can do
Okay.
in your stroke window as well, but you can also, if you've got your essentials open, you can do it right up top here, right?
Oh, and I see that and we want dashed.
Yeah, and you can choose it up here. I'm just showing you both locations, really.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
so underneath that 1 point, you can also choose dash, but I'm trying to show you where everything is located. Like I said, there's always an extra or another way to do something, so I'm trying to show you in both. So line thickness can be changed in stroke, the type of line that you're creating, and then you can also change your endpoints. So if you need like an arrow, or if you need like a square start, or like a bar start, you can do that, and then you can end with any of those as well. So if you have a custom line that you're trying to make, that's a great way to come in. And then of course you can always scale that, and then you can also align it. So a lot of different stuff in here, and then depending on the type of line, some of these have a gutter spacing, or what they call a gap spacing. Like if we did thin, there's a line up top and a line at the bottom, but there's a space between the two. You can also choose a gap color to go in between there. So it gives you a few options in the stroke window because it gives you some new stuff that you can work with. Because we're only using these just as guides, we don't need to change our endpoints or our joints because we're doing straight lines. But if you guys remember, if you've taken Illustrator with me, we were able to change to a round cap or a square cap or a projecting cap. these are the same features that you would find in Illustrator. And then the joint is where an angle happens, and this allows for you to do a rounded joint or a bevel joint or your miter joint. So it has all the same features that Illustrator also has for a stroke, so it allows for you to adjust that if you need it. We're not using that on this project, but if you're going to be drawing in Illustrator or in InDesign, you have those same features that you can use in Illustrator. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So that's your stroke palette. That gives you some good tools to use if you're making modifications. So that allows for you to do that. So we have these at 25% in transparency, right? And we've got them set up for dashed, just 1 point lines. Nothing crazy. Now the beauty of this is that this should translate now down to our main pages here. So if I bring this down, I'm going to double click on page 1. You have to double click. You have to make sure that this is no longer blue on the master page area in the page window. So if I double click, you'll see number 1 show up, and guess what? Now we have those guides, those folding marks on page 1. Now if I click on those and try and highlight them, they're not going to go anywhere because we designed them on the master page. Let's come over to page 2. That's going to be the same thing. We've got them stuck there, which is why I love working with master pages, because it allows for me to create something that I can just have there on the page, but it doesn't get in my way, especially if it's something that's going to be consistent for every page that I'm working on. And now the reason why we have an A master left and right hand page, it does allow us to be able to put things on those pages that would be different. So in most cases, if you were designing a book, you'd want to have your left and right hand page, and most likely your page numbering or the page information at the bottom is going to be in a different location on your left hand page than it would be on your right hand page, which is why we get our facing pages. Okay, so you have to make sure you're accommodating for those two pages to be together. And I thought it would be more interesting for you guys to design this. Now looking at the little dummy that you're going to put together, you're going to see this come together. So let's go ahead and we're going to mark the pages so you know what you're going to be designing on each page. So I want you to come to your page 1 and you're going to make a text box. And in this text box, you're going to say cover designs only. All right. I just want this to be a reminder for you as you forget about this for the next couple of days and come back to it this weekend and start to design, and then you realize I have no idea what Janine said. So I'm saving you a few minutes of video time so that way you can just come back and remember. I'm just going to copy this text box and I'm going to come down to the left-hand page. So I'm going to scooch over here. And I'm going to be a little bit more precise on this page. This is the one where when we're looking at the dummy and we lay it flat, our cover is going to be on the right hand side. So I'm going to choose to say cover here, right? I'm going to make it bigger just so you guys can see it, because this panel is going to be our cover. This middle panel, does anyone know what this is? Do you know what panel this is?
The back.
Correct. This is our back panel. And then the last one is what? Anyone?
I have been saying, but I have my mic on mute.
That's That's okay. Reveal, right? So we've got our reveal, our back, our cover. I've just selected all of them because I'm going to copy and paste these over to the other page and then just fill in what I need to over here. And I'm going to call this page 1.
I'm going to need help with this project because I'm so lost.
Page 2. I think once you get your dummy together, you're going to be fine.
Alright. Well,
Okay.
I'm probably gonna need. I'm probably still gonna come because I think I still messed up on the overall
gutters?
background of
Okay.
the lines.
Okay. They're
The
just
bleeds in the
there's
margin.
yep, there's just yeah, because if this is incorrect, that'll give you a hard time when you start putting your content in.
But yeah, I think I'm gonna listen. But
But you can always
yeah,
go back and watch
because
the
I think I
video
messed
too.
up. But I will try to join back Friday.
Yeah, come on in. Robert's going to be interviewing me. You can listen to him talk about my life. All right, now, Robert, this is something you and I talked about last week. We've got these boxes that just sit around our text, and I don't like to design with those on. So I'm going to come up under View at the top here and Extras, and I'm going to go ahead and select Hide Frame Edges. This is a designer's choice. You don't have to turn this off. It just makes me crazy when they're on though because there's too much space and I don't want to see the box. So that's how you get rid of that. Just come up to View and Extras, go to Show Frame Edges. Okay, so I'm just going to turn those off. Now obviously I'm not going to keep these here, you know, while I'm designing. So I'm going to use my layers to say this is going to be a layer that I'm just using right now to define. I don't want to get rid of them as I design just in case I need to go back and just check something. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a new layer. I'm just going to lock layer 1 down for now. I could always eyeball it off and be able to check my design, but this is just going to now give me my own layer to hide this stuff on here so that way I can just come back and double check that I've got everything in the right spot. Okay? So layer 1 we're just going to use as defining which page and which panel goes with what. Alright? And up here obviously cover designs only. This is where you're going to be designing your specific 3 covers. So the first part of this project you have to design using their logo, using their information, the cover for the beginning of your menu. Because that's really going to dictate what the rest of the design is going to be doing, how you're going to be using imagery, how you're going to be using graphics, and how you're going to be working with your text, right? So I can't show you style sheets yet, but next week we'll be working with style sheets, and the style sheets are going to be defining the type as you're going to be using it. So you have to have all of your content in. Just flow it through, leave it in there as ugly as it possibly can be. I don't want you formatting anything. I do, though, want you to make a decision on the typefaces you would like to use. I just don't want you to apply them to the text that you're bringing in. So what you're going to be doing with this, right, I'm going to just come over to page 1. So I'm just going to turn my layers off there so that you can just see my blank page. I'm going to come in with my text box tool. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create that text box. I'm creating it on layer 2 because I want to make sure that I've got that in there. So I'm going to pop over to my menu and I'll just pick up this wonderful restaurant that I found. Oh, bakery. Yeah, hello, I'm all in. Okay, so this wonderful little bakery, and I'm going to start with breads because who doesn't want breads, right? There's a lot of breads, but I'm going to hit copy and I'm going to pop into my text box and I'm going to hit paste. I know this looks terrible, right? They're all sitting on top of each other. We've got no spacing. I want you to just leave this. I don't want you to format anything. We're going to be working on that next week, all right? But what I do need is your headlines, your menu items with descriptions, and your pricing, okay? And we're going to start working on formatting. I know this seems weird, and obviously this is going to take up a lot more space than what I've defined, but it's going to allow us to have the text that we need in here. What you can do is come to your little red box at the bottom if there continues to be text, which there should be, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to drop that into the rest of the text area on page 2 or on panel 2 and panel 3. Now I have obviously got way more text than I'm going to ever use in this, And as I start to come together and bring this together, I can start deleting out the sections that I don't want. Maybe I don't want quiche because I don't like quiche. Maybe I'm just going to skip from the Savoy right to the panini. But it allows for me to have everything in there, and then I can start to format. This is what I expect next week. Just random text that has stuff. Now, if you get a menu that's a little bit more organized and it doesn't get this crazy, that's okay. But this gives us the stuff we need to start doing our style sheets and formatting next week. Okay?
Basically, we're small so that like we can edit to like our little small, super small restaurant, and it's like super simple just to know where to start from.
I'm sorry, I missed the end of that, Christian.
Yeah, and just have an idea of how far we can just develop those ideas into something bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, so for next week, for the menu, I need you to just drop text in. Don't worry about, does it look good? Can I read it yet? Just go get it and just drop it into at least your 3 interior panels. I'm going to be able to pull content now for my reveal panel, right? So no, hold on. Turn that back on. So I know that I'm going to have a reveal panel over here. And I may say, you know what? Breads don't really have anything to do with the menu. Like, I'm not going to order bread. But I would love to have this on the reveal panel because I love bread so much. And now I can actually just put a section where there's just breads. And that'll be beautiful. It is a bakery after all, right? So this just gives me content. Now I can come in and say, okay, next week we're making a decision. I want breads. I'm just cutting this out, normal text box. I want breads to be on my reveal panel, and that's my choice. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop that text there, and I can come in and now play with that text. I don't need to link this text box to this because it's a separate panel. And if I start moving stuff around over here, I don't want it to affect this. So I'm going to leave this as a standalone text box, no links. All right?
Sounds good.
Okay, now let's talk about your back panel. This is where you have to write. I know. You have to give me the story about how this restaurant got started. It doesn't have to be the true story. It can be a made-up story. So you get to be the storyteller. So you get to tell me about how the restaurant got started. Do something fun. Don't give me some lame story about, I love food, so I made a restaurant. Give me the backstory. I'm gonna
come up with a kung fu story about how it started.
Okay, that's what I want. I was out in the Alps picking raspberries off some prickly bushes, and I met this man who was selling cheese, and we just got talking about food and how wonderful everything is, and we came back to America and celebrated and opened a restaurant, blah, 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 whatever. Have fun with your story. I want you to make something that's interesting that people will want to read, right? So you get to have a creative writing experience here. It needs to fit on the back panel, along with, and Dawn, this is where your question comes in. We need to also include the information. I'm going to pop back over to Sinbad's because they have it right at the bottom there. But you also need to include their phone number, their address, and their hours. I don't care about this part, but hours, address, and phone number. That's important. And that's going to go right on the back side, and it can go right underneath your story. Okay?
Okay.
Now, if your restaurant is kind of made up, you can also make up the address and your hours and your phone number. But I have a feeling a lot of you will pick a restaurant because it's kind of fun when you can look at menus from a lot of different places. All right, so that's going to go on your back panel here. You can either have it at the top or the bottom, but make sure you've got your little story about how this came about, and then you can put that at the bottom. And then this panel here is going to be your cover, right? So I'm going to just do this big, I keep turning it off, don't I? Kind of need that on, right? So this is going to be your cover design. I'll just make it a big color, right? So there's my cover. Isn't it beautiful? Now, keep in mind, we have these guides here to make sure that our text is staying within this space, right? If we get our text too far out to the edge of this fold or to the edge of the document, it becomes too difficult to read. And this is a menu there's a lot of information that's going to happen here. And I know you guys have all seen menus that are crammed full of information, and it's really difficult to read. So we want to make sure that we don't get too close to the edge. So you have to stay, keep your type in the space of the guide. But when we talk about images, if you have an image or especially your cover design, you can make this come and bleed right off the edge. Now, of course, your cover is only going to bleed left to, you can't bleed to the back panel. So you're only going to bleed to the outside panel and the top and bottom. But if you choose to do that, you can definitely do that. Or you can work with, your design within the space too. But don't make a box within just your guide area and then tell me that that's your cover when it really looks like it should bleed off the front. So just keep that in mind when you're working. I just want to make sure you guys know you can use that full space on the cover. You don't have to stay within your guides. Okay? Sound like a plan? So Courtney's one of my students, and I actually thought she had her menu up here, but I wasn't seeing it. So now I got to talk to her about why she didn't put it up here, because she actually did a really cool menu. So I was pulling her work up to show her, but it's not here now. But I wanted to share with you guys an example of one, and I think all my students have taken them down now. So now I'm kind of bummed because I can't share it with you. But I will send you one as an example so you can see what it looks like. Now, the first page that we created, this one up here, is going to be the 3 designs that you're going to work out this week, right? We already talked about you getting your menu in, but I need you to come up with 3 concepts. And when I say concepts, 3 different approaches to how you could design this cover. So you're going to be working with this panel here, you're going to be working with this panel, and then next week we're going to choose one of your 3. Now, typically with this project, I have you do hand sketches first and then get to electronic. But 1, we don't have a ton of time. And 2, because we're doing this online, I think it would be easier. But does that mean you should skip the sketching process? No. I would still do hand sketches to get ideas down on paper. And if you're going to put people in these pictures, you can do your little, stick figures. If you're going to do food, just kind of do a quick sketch. Just to get an idea, I would use images as research. I would figure out what you want to do with this stylistically, right? So if you're working with, say, a restaurant like Sinbad's, what would be appropriate to see on the cover, right? Now, obviously, they have very specific pitas. Go ahead, Dawn.
Oh, sorry, I was just saying olives.
Yeah, olives, right? It's got a Greek influence. They do things with yogurts. They do things with cut up meats, right? Kebabs. They have wonderful desserts. What did I see? Baklava was in here. They've got lady fingers. So hello, I'm all in there. Phyllo dough. So, obviously we could definitely see that Greek influence and the Greek style food coming in. But that doesn't mean to say we also couldn't take a look at, say their gallery, which might also have some images that you could also use for this, right? So here we are. We've got pictures of the people eating. Does that help you with style? Well, look at this right over here on the wall. They've got these great diamond shapes in these yellows and golds. This could be something you could use as inspiration for the cover design, right? Even these linear lights that they've got in there, you could use lines. Some great pictures of food. And there's your olive right there, right? So that's perfect. A lot of fresh vegetables and fruits.
Now I'm hungry.
Well, we are getting into lunchtime, aren't we? You know, so think about colors that you could pull from. Think about these are beautiful, right? So, you know, I definitely say that we should all go to lunch here. But you know, you're looking at these kind of orangey gold colors within the restaurant. These are valuable. This information is really valuable because I might want to do a pattern on the front of the, menu that might be in the background. And then of course I'm looking at the outside of the building here with the sign. You know, it says Sinbad's. He's kind of got this boat, right? Because it's a Mediterranean cuisine. You could do something with blues and waters because it's Mediterranean. You know, so think about some elements that might help you make this really relate to the restaurant. That's what we're looking for. Oh, that looks really good. So this is where you get to start looking at what they already have in existence. If they were really a client of yours, and I gotta be honest, their color palette is right here on their website, literally, like boom, 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 right? Like this is their color palette. So, you know, sometimes looking at the restaurant, looking at pictures will help you to be able to develop this out because the restaurant already exists. So now we can just take the style they've created and apply that into the design. So what are some options? You guys tell me, what are some options you could use to create these 3 covers?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
So what would be some concepts that you could use? What would be elements that you'd want to include in one of the designs for the cover?
Logo, right? Is that what you're asking?
We have to have the logo on there, yep. What else could you do?
Address.
Nope, that's going on the back.
People's eating.
Give me a concept.
People eating.
Maybe, so maybe, for example, you could take use an image of what inspired the restaurant. Maybe, for example, if it's Mexican food, maybe you could take a picture of like a typical Mexican town or something like that.
Well, yeah, depending on the style of restaurant. This is Mediterranean, so maybe we could see some Mediterranean shots, right?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Go ahead, Don.
I just said yeah.
Oh, okay. We all want to be in the Mediterranean right now. Robert, what are your thoughts?
On
What would you do for a cover design for Sinbad's?
the logo, I guess, and a nice background.
When you say nice background, here's your concept. What would you do?
I'm simplistic, but like you said, that background that was in that photo would look nice. The orange and gold or whatever. It was.
Yep. Would you have food showing in it or not?
No.
Okay. So you're just using color, just a color palette.
Yeah.
And we could always, turn this into a Greek style, maybe use columns, like Greek columns. We could see boats or elements of a boat. I mean, it's just because it's a restaurant doesn't mean you can't include influences of where the food came from. People connect to that. So we don't always have to see food on the cover in order to know that it's that style. So if you were picking a hamburger joint, obviously we'd want to see a hamburger, but we could also play around with some other things. What do you do when you eat a hamburger? Or is there an interior shot of the restaurant that's kind of cool? Are there patterns and textures that we could put into this, right? So when you think about hamburgers, I always think about like that red and white checkered tablecloth, right? So, those are the kinds of things that sometimes that we can connect people to the food. So just think about those things when you're going into your design. I don't want to see the same 3 ideas or the same 3 images just done in different ways. I really want you to come up with 3 different concepts and we'll pick one for your final cover. Okay? Make sense?
Yeah.
If you're not sure, do some hand sketches and send them through Kazala, get some feedback so that way you're on track for next week. Because you will have to create them electronically for next week, and then we'll be picking from that point on. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Any questions on what you guys have due for next week?
Not really. I would appreciate if we are, as classmates, a bit more, maybe, what do you say?
Conversational?
Proactive. No, maybe more proactive. I'm gonna try my best so that I'm gonna be like, okay, so I already did this, this, and this. Is there anything else that you guys know I need to do, or like to help each other more in terms of like, just like share more in Kaisala so that we're more on like looking over our shoulder what our classmates are doing and we don't fall behind.
I'd love that.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to be a little bit more proactive and posting whenever instead of just doing it and being like, okay, well, that's done. I'm going to try to share it more so that, yeah, we can go together in this and we don't miss anything, because sometimes we will forget something and someone will forget something. And so if we, I'm pretty sure that things that I might have missed, someone might have picked up, and so we can help each other, and I hope we can do that more for this new project. So I'm gonna try to do that, and I'm super excited with doing that. Now the things as they are expected.
Well, you know, Christian, the problem most of the time is a wonderful word we call procrastination. So
yeah, like you showed us at the beginning. So I
yes.
think that if we are quiet, we're all going to quietly procrastinate.
Yes.
But if we make a little noise, it's probably gonna be like, oh yeah, that looks so easy to do. I'm just gonna do it like the same. If we show a picture of like our development, it's gonna be like easier for one another to be like, oh yeah, that looks like it takes like just 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, instead of dreading like, oh, I have creative block, I can't do it.
Yeah.
You know? I think that will inspire us and will help us a lot. So I think we should use that tool more.
Yes.
And I think it's the best tool. Whereas like Pinterest, it's okay, and but Behance, it's also like just like a showing of what like finished products are. Kaisala is really good for development, so
right, because
I really want to explore that more.
Well, everyone in the class is in the same boat you are right now, right? So.
What are you guys talking about?
All right, so Kazala, and you did accept my one invitation. I don't know if you accepted the other one. So Kazala is our chat group. Let me just see here. All right, I'm going to invite you again, Dawn.
Okay.
But you haven't yet accepted my invite to this class. So I'm assuming you got it. I heard a ding.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just have to accept that, and then you're going to be part of our group. So this is our group for page layout. So if you post anything in this group, it's going to go to the students that are just in page layout, and you can take pictures of your screen, you can take pictures of sketches, whatever you want to post. You can ask questions in there, and that's basically how we stay connected all week. So that way, if you're working on anything, or you just have a question like, oh my God, I totally forgot how to do this, I will respond, or any of the students can respond.
Okay.
Yep, it just gives us a way to stay connected all week long, right? And you don't have to feel bad because you're emailing me, and sometimes I don't always get my emails right away. With Kazala, it's just a texting app. So if your phone's with you, you know you got it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sometimes Christian needs to vent, so he'll just post random stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
It's okay. I love it.
I don't know. Like I try like whenever I start like drinking a few beers. I literally hide my phone from myself, because then I'm starting telling like everybody like, hey, what are you doing? But yeah, okay, thank you.
I think my favorite was last week. We were all up late. I don't even know why I was up. I was just up. And so everyone was finishing, Dawn. And so they were finishing their project, and they were texting. I think it was up till 2 o'clock in the morning you guys were texting?
It was super late.
Yeah, I was late. So yes. I am missing a few people's projects from last week. So if you haven't shared your newsletter with me, please make sure you do that. Okay?
You have mine, right?
Let me double check. Yep, I've got yours. You're all set. I've got Skylar's. I've got. Is your test newsletter final? That's yours, right, Christian?
I'm sorry, what?
It's called test newsletter final. That was your
Yeah.
final. All right, just put your name on that next time, just so that I know it's your document.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay. Once I download them and they all say newsletter, it's really hard for me to figure out whose is whose. Luckily, that project you have pictures in, so I'm usually.
Sure that you're mentioning this because when you were like earlier today explaining how you would write like the name of the file and just start by your
My name.
and then
Yeah.
and then underscore and then I was like, ouch.
It just makes it easier. Once I download stuff to my computer, it doesn't always come in with your name on it if you don't have it.
Yeah. Yes, it's like who and then what.
Right. Now the newsletter is pretty easy to define because it's about your family, so I can usually figure it out. But all right, so it looks like everyone's in except for Dawn. So make sure Dawn, you go in and recreate that. I would double check. You can go into InDesign and you can search Open Recent. And if that's the last file, if your daughter accidentally dropped it somewhere or put it in the trash can, yet it's still available, it might show up. And then you can see if you can find that. I would always check your trash can, though, too, because a lot of people throw things on the trash can and never empty the trash because you have to physically do that. So check there, too, because it won't. Yeah, it just might be some options to look at before you give up and have to start over again.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions you guys have about the menu project?
No.
Okay, I'm sending you off into the wild world to go research, find out your what restaurant you want to do. Unless anyone has theirs now, you can give it to me. No? Okay, will you guys figure out what restaurant you want to do today, get their menu downloaded, and then start thinking about your 3 cover designs, okay?
Okay.
And I will see you, well, not you, Dawn. Have a great day. The rest of you, I'll see you at 12:30.
All right.
Okay?
Okay.
Sound- I have to run an errand right now.
Okay.
But I'll be within the 10 minutes. If I'm late, I'll be 10 minutes late.
Okay.
Morning.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Talk to you guys later.